the watch party. So much happening. I feel like I'm already talking 1,000 miles a minute, but I wanted to say hi before we jump straight in. You know, I was trying to be the biggest nerd ever and start like 15, even 20 minutes early today because there's so much going on. So I'm glad you guys are here. Whoever is here at the beginning is going to catch the beginning of these stories. I've only got 5 minutes extra. Of course, it is a Monday. I'll be jumping on John's show, The Damage Report, immediately after. And I found myself going over lately. So why not get started early? A few of you guys have said that, but technology's messing with me. And I've said it a million times. The thing I hate the most is technology screwing up and just falling apart and not allowing me to be where I need to be. So as things go through that, let's go ahead and get started on things. I want to say hi to everyone at first for a second, all you nerds that are here. Let me pause that for a second because it's going to slow me down. All you nerds that are here also as well. What's up, Ma? Number one talking on the watch party. I'm glad she's up with us today. Let's go ahead and get started, you guys. There's so much happening. Donald Trump is trying so many of these power grabs and authoritarian fascist moves that define his entire few months of his presidency. It's who he is. It's who he's always been. Let's go ahead and talk about what we've been hearing happening just on Friday in the evening when he threw a temper tantrum. Let's go ahead and get started.
We're seeing phenomenal numbers in terms of the business we do with other countries and the business we do within our own country. I mean, really phenomenal numbers. We'll be announcing a new statistician sometime over the next 3-4 days. We had no confidence. I mean, the numbers were ridiculous, what she announced, but that was just one negative number. All of the numbers seem to be great. And so we'll see how that comes out. And if you remember, just before the election, this woman came out with these phenomenal numbers on Biden's economy. Phenomenal numbers. And then right after the election, they announced that those numbers were wrong. And that's what they did the other day. So it's a scam, in my opinion. My opinion is it's just additional scam.
Fired her because we didn't believe the numbers today. Even though interest rates are too high, we have a terrible head of the Fed. He keeps interest rates too high. And I could understand that, but I don't believe those numbers. I think because we're doing so well.
Because I think her numbers were wrong, just like I thought her numbers were wrong before the election. So you know what I did? I fired her. Right. And you know what? I did the right thing. We need people that we can trust.
Donald Trump fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner just on Friday because he didn't like how his failures are being displayed through true facts and actual numbers, because that's how fascists work. They control narratives, and when the narratives don't fit their agenda, which is to control and destroy this entire country for the sake of him making more money and give it off to his oligarchs and cover up all of his scandals, if that doesn't work, then what's left is to get rid of the people who are exposing you with basic, straightforward facts. And by the way, he said not people, but one person, the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? It's just that one person. And of course, whenever fascists do things like this, what they need is people to back them up and change what reality is so that other folks can believe them. And of course, they run to Fox News to do that.
Well, on July 3rd, the Washington Post wrote the following here: why some fear government data on the U.S. economy is losing integrity. It goes on to say these challenges could have real world consequences beyond Washington, from Wall Street trading floors to Main Street boardrooms. Government benchmarks are vital to businesses, investors, and consumers making decisions about hiring, spending, and borrowing. Now, people rely on these job numbers, and they have, been a mess in over the past year plus.
Absolutely. These numbers are critical not only to the United States, but global markets, and have global implications. There is a credibility issue right now. Imagine every day you go in to do your job, you have to file one big report every month. And every month after that, you have to go back and fix it. I can't imagine you'd keep your job very long. And if the issue was the information you were given to have that report done, that was the problem. You should have addressed it before. There is a totality of breakdown of information information here, and the president is finally holding somebody accountable. We need to trust the numbers the government is putting out. And when it gets revised every month, there are absolutely questions that should be answered, and this should be fixed, because we shouldn't have to question what is actually happening with the job market in the United States.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to question what's happened with the job market in the United States, of course. But when you fire people and say, I need to put my personal lackeys in place to make sure those job numbers fit whatever agenda I want, they ignore the fact that the vast majority of Americans would no longer trust the job numbers that this fixed administration would then put out. As independent agencies continue to get dismantled and completely taken apart and fired of all the people who do normal work, that's the kind of thing that sows distrust in all of these institutions. And as that distrust is sown in those institutions, people then stop trusting everything that happens within the government. It's all projection. It's consistent. Everything that they say that someone else is doing is 100% what they're doing. That's why they say it so freely and cleanly, because it's literally in their plans. So why would anybody trust these types of numbers from these types of people? It's consistent, but they ignore the fact that the majority of Americans despise everything that they're doing. We heard Donald Trump say it at the beginning on that the compilation of the few times that he kept saying the same things. I believe these job numbers aren't real. I do, because they make me look bad. They're saying it blatantly and straightforward. There's really no other way to act like you're an authoritarian without doing authoritarian things. They just have to convince enough people that authoritarianism isn't what's looking right them in the face. So that's why, after these numbers could come out, this is the type of numbers that Donald Trump would probably like to have on anything. But in this particular case, in that time when he was standing on the tarmac talking about how he's firing folks for not giving him what he wants that have nothing to do with reality, this is the way he would pitch numbers and expect people to believe it.
Hill, heading into midterms, what do they need to do? What can they do to, hold?
Well, one of the things they're going to be talking about pretty soon are the tremendous drop in drug prices. We've cut drug prices by 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, 1,500%. I don't mean 50%. I mean 1,400, 1,500%, because we're going.
Hill, heading into midterms.
How do you drop drug price numbers by 1,500%? Just making up numbers. How is it he jumped from 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, 1,500%? It's cartoonish, and this is what happens when you have to put lackeys in place that don't base it on any kind of actual evidence or any kind of studies or any kind of actual work. What it is making things up. And you become a cartoon presidency like fascists would. The way that we talked before about Kim Jong-un, or maybe it was his dad, who bowled a 300 game in bowling every time. Just like this liar probably golfs a perfect game every time. I mean, hole in one on every hole. This is the way fascists work. And of course, we saw his caddy, in this case, Donald Trump's caddy, drop a ball in a nice favorable spot. That's how he golfs, because he's a fascist. The simplest things that don't mean anything to anyone else. Go ahead, cheat in solitaire, bro. But the thing is, nobody would actually care if you weren't trying to control everyone's lives with that same kind of approach to the way that you, I guess you can say, govern. That's not what he's doing. He's enriching himself, and he's trying to play the game to make himself look better than what he is that he's actually doing to everybody's lives in this country. So as people lose jobs, he's just going to tell you, no, you didn't lose your job, while you're sitting at home looking for another and don't have much of a job market available to you, because as these businesses aren't hiring people because they're suffering from these same policies, we're supposed to sit back and go, man, I've been working 40 hours a week, getting paid more than I ever have, despite the fact that you're sitting there wondering how you're going to feed your family. But they don't care that that's happening. The next step after you finally are fed up with playing this game of an alternate reality is to then attack you. That's why there's military people in the streets right now. That's how they operate. And by the way, that was him talking about drug prices. This is the way that it would be delivered. Caroline Levitt showed this like some kind of 2-year-old in a show and tell about how this is this policy that's put forward. It's very similar to that tariff policy that's also sucking.
Team stands ready to assist with implementation questions. Thank you for your immediate attention to this vital national priority. Signed, President Donald J. Trump. Again, to the CEO of Eli Lilly. This letter, in its form, has been designed for each of the 17 major drug and pharmaceutical companies in the United States. And we're happy to provide you the full list. And I believe you will see all 17 letters popping on Truth Social very shortly. So you can look out for those. And I'm happy to team stands ready to assist.
I have a letter, and the letter is from Donald Trump. Donald Trump sent it to all of these executives and said he demands them to do what he wants. And then that'll just happen. Similar to the letter to Mr. Japan, demanding that they do what he wants. And after some of those folks in other countries then respond and say, sure, yeah, we'll do all that stuff. None of that's in place. There's no way this is actually going to happen. No trade deals have been signed, just tariff letters. So the same opportunity to try and fool people into believing because his scribble scrabble signature is at the bottom of a piece of paper that is some kind of binding contract that people are going to listen to, that people who are overcharging us because of our policies are put in place to allow them to overcharge us for things like drugs and prescription drugs in this particular case, that just because he writes a letter, it's all going to change. It's to make people think so while they're still getting screwed. Let's go back to the subject at hand, though. I just want to give you guys an aside as to the way that he would like these numbers to be delivered. But going back to the way that they fired this commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Kevin Hassett, supposed to be some finance guy. He's helping him with his lies approaching these tariffs. He goes on Fox Business and sometimes CNBC to carry these lies, and he gets embarrassed. But I think his job is to just get embarrassed and talk about these things. This is the way he approached trying to talk about firing this woman who doesn't even have much a role in changing these things, which we'll get to in a second. But watch Kevin Hassett.
So there was a statement out by a number of former BLS commissioners, including the one that President Trump had in his first term, and they said it's not good to cast aspersions on what's being done because it's a formula. It's used the same way every single time. So are you saying maybe the formulas, the calculations need to change? What would you do differently?
Right, that's right. They have to, get back to ground zero and look at why the numbers have started to be so unreliable, and why did the numbers not really pick up the gig economy and so on. But again, to put it in perspective, over the last, or I'll go back to COVID, pretty much the numbers were really reliable until COVID. And then during COVID, the numbers got very unreliable. They got revised all the time, all over the place. But we kind of understand why that would happen because people aren't really filling out surveys and so on. But what happened then is that after COVID, the big revisions kept happening. And so right now we've got BLS numbers that aren't really a lot better than they were during COVID, and we need to understand why. And so I think that the president's right to call for new leadership. I think Erica is a terrific person, but I think that it's time for someone to get in there and fix this because these numbers are so crucial. These numbers are absolutely, in my talk back in 2015, I talked about how the data can't be propaganda. The data has to be something that you could trust because decision makers throughout the economy trust that these are the data that they can build a factory because they believe, or cut interest rates because they believe. And if
these numbers can't be propaganda. Listen for the projection. The numbers have become propaganda as he tries to install some kind of a loyalist that'll do nothing but what he needs them to do to make himself look great when things are actually horrible. They tell you their plan. They just heap it on the people that they're saying are doing it, that have been doing it for however long, for decades. So ever since then, suddenly, as this guy's policies, which many, not even economists, but people that watch their lives unfold in front of them, say was going to happen, then suddenly this entire process that he trusted before it's a mess. It's rigged. It's set up. How come it wasn't rigged and set up before? As a matter of fact, someone already asked Kevin Hassett that question. As I said, he looks like a fool every time he goes on TV, and this particular weekend was no difference. This is the same guy.
President Trump himself was happy to accept the jobs numbers issued under McIntyre's leadership when the numbers were good. Take a listen to what he said in the past.
The numbers were much better, as you know, than projected by the media.
In 3 months, we have created 350,000 jobs. Think of that.
A lot of jobs are being created. That's what happened this morning. We saw the jobs.
So is the president prepared to fire anyone who reports data that he disagrees with?
No, absolutely not. The president wants his own people there so that when we see the numbers, they're more transparent and more reliable. And if there are big changes and big revisions, we expect more big revisions for the jobs data in September, for example, that we want to know why. We want people to explain it to us.
President Trump.
More transparent and more reliable. Somehow him putting his people in place that he literally said, I need someone that's going to tell me what I need to do, what I need to make me look better. Somehow that's more transparent and more reliable. How transparent has this administration been? They also promised transparency on the Epstein files. That's not happening. Transparency on the job market. That's not happening. Transparency on these foreign negotiations for ending all the wars, which haven't been ended yet. In fact, he's enhanced. None of that has happened. Where's this transparency and dependency? Because none of it is dependable. None of it is transparent. I'm trying to figure out why they think that people can just listen to these things that they say that are completely in opposition to our reality and think that enough people will believe them. Kevin Hassett also went on CNBC, and I think he thinks that is some kind of a location where he can be more honest about how things look, and that folks who watch him on Fox Business and Fox News won't also switch over to CNBC and see how he acknowledges how bad the job numbers actually were. His job is to carry water to the people he can push the propaganda towards, and then when he's actually discussing about it, and someone in the finance community talks to him about it, he feels this obligation to give them some level of reality. Watch the way he talks here on CNBC, though.
Just the markets seem to believe the revisions in the numbers more than they believe the original numbers. That's why you saw bond yields tumble on Friday. Are you in agreement with that? Do you think we are starting to see a real slowdown in the jobs market?
Yeah, I think the jobs numbers were slower than we expected. I think that like one of the explanations for revisions is they have more complete data. And so I think it is likely that the revisions are a better read of the data if the data are not being manipulated. And so, yeah, I would say that it's a little bit weaker. But don't forget, this is before the big, beautiful bill is really kicking in. And so with our eyes on the horizon, we're highly optimistic about the future of this economy. We've got the big, beautiful bill. We've got expensing of factories, got no taxes on tips. We've got incomes going up $10,000 for a typical family. And we've got all of that happening while the budget deficit's declining rapidly because of the tariff revenue. And so there are a lot of really good reasons to be super optimistic about the second half of the year. But absolutely, that jobs number, if the revision turns out to be true, does suggest that there's less momentum than we thought. And you know, you could say that the dissenters at the Fed saw this coming. They specifically mentioned that there were signs of labor market weakening. They were pointing, I think, to the ADP release as much as anything. And so, yeah, I think that the pressure on the Fed to get its policy in order is going to be higher because of this. And that's, you know, proving that the president was right about it.
I want to explain to you guys what all that BS that he was saying meant, because he was giving some points of reality and acknowledging some things. He said when it comes to the stock market response, because that was the question that was being asked, he then acknowledged that those revisions are a better read of the data. They're bitching and complaining right now about the revisions. That's what they're so upset about. The revisions to the data showed that there was this huge drop in the job market, that the expected numbers were in June even were 150, some 250,000 less than what they were expecting. On Fox News and Fox Business, he talks about how that's all fake and we got to put someone in place that's going to do things the right way. But for some reason on CNBC, he acknowledges that the data could be correct, and that's why things at the Fed need to be changed, like lowering interest rates. Don't forget, for the past couple weeks, maybe months, Donald Trump has been going after Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, for not lowering interest rates because things are so great. Kevin Hassett just went on TV and said, we need to lower the rate at the Fed because things are so shitty. Which one is it, bro? Which one is it? Just like tariffs, at one point, they raise your taxes on everything, prices go up until they decide to go on some propaganda channel and say that, yo, tariffs actually are a tax on everyone else except for consumers. All these corporations and companies that are looking to make as much money as possible in our capitalistic society, they don't care about making money anymore. All they care about doing is allowing Donald Trump to do whatever he wants and raising their prices and their bottom line. When have you heard of a company that's all about lowering their bottom line? That's why prices always are still consistently going up. So he admits it a little bit there for the sake of trying to have these lower Fed rates. That happens in a shit economy. They're arguing for that, but don't want to argue the shit economy. Weird how that works. But he's still optimistic about the rest of the year because of the big, beautiful bill. And also talking about how these tariffs are going to change things. Pay attention right now, because before this was a problem. Now it's happening with our job market. We're saying currently, and also before that bill was passed, that's going to destroy more people's lives, kick tons of people off of their health care. That's coming. That's how it works. And they even stretched all the provisions of this bill over a few years, all the way to the end of this guy's term, so that when things are pure shit, they can blame it on whoever else may be there. This dude definitely won't. They think they can talk in so many different ways out of every corner of their mouths, and people won't pay attention to what it is that they're saying. The conflicting things that they're saying, along with the things that are absolute complete lies. Maybe he was worried that that anchor was going to say something like, that doesn't make any sense, Kevin. And he'd have to go in and change it up. But when he's talking to Bria Bartiromo, she's never going to say anything like that. Now, really fast. The aspect of this where he's even talking about firing the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and what she did to embarrass him because his policies embarrass all of us. I'm going to show you a couple of folks who actually know what they're talking about. And if you listen to reality, you'll understand she doesn't even have that much of an effect on those numbers, but they scapegoat it down to one person for simplistic people that follow everything this guy says. Watch, I got a couple people, watch.
Dan, you worked at that agency, 1 to 10, 10 being basically worst case scenario. Where do you put this?
This is about a 9.5 trending to a 10. Look, this is like firing the referee because you don't like the final score of a game. If you look at the typical timeline of how this works, the BLS commissioner isn't even presented with the data until the Wednesday before the announcement. By the way, the president claimed that he first saw the jobs data this morning. That's almost certainly a lie. Typically, the president and his senior team are briefed the day before the jobs numbers come out. There's another thing I want to point out, too, is there's two different surveys within the report. There's the establishment survey, that's a survey of businesses. There's also a household survey, which is a survey of households and demographics. So another thing that's a concern here is all the demographic data, not just race data, but immigrant worker data, is now at the mercy of this new BLS commissioner. You know what the president feels about DEI. So all of these things could, in theory, be manipulated by a loyalist that Trump appoints.
Are we paying attention? She can't even control these things. But they shorten it down to one person, just one person that controls everything. So Donald Trump can fire one person, put in someone else who will then have these fake numbers that whatever happens with the people who actually work on it, present. He'll give his minions and maybe people who aren't paying enough attention whatever he wants to give them. I got someone else. He's the former commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and he had even more to say about how this works in case people aren't really paying attention. Maybe we can listen to him.
The president said that the BLS commissioner rigged these numbers.
Yeah.
What do you think?
There's no way for that to happen. The commissioner doesn't do anything to collect the numbers. The commissioner doesn't see the numbers until Wednesday before they're published. By the time the commissioner sees the numbers, they're all prepared. They're locked into the computer system. The only thing the commissioner does on Wednesday is to kind of do the edits on the text. So there's no hands-on at all for the commissioner. I was commissioner, and I was sometimes locked out of the process of actually, where the people were working in the building. So there's no way for doing that.
Bill Beach, former commissioner of the BLS, said that he was locked out of it in many cases. There's people who work on this. There's a process involved. Donald Trump doesn't understand processes because he doesn't have one except for the ones he invents in his brain, where he then tells people what it is he wants done and he expects it done. No process, no work, no actual reasoning or numbers behind what he says. That's why he said he's going to lower drug prices by 1,500% with a damn letter. Bill Beach ain't done. He's not done.
What I think really upset the president on Friday were the revisions to May and June, big revisions. But that's because, like every time we publish on Friday, there are revisions to the previous 2 months. This is a survey, and a survey has sample returns. You know, people have done surveys. You know, you answer your phone.
It's basically like a poll.
Yeah, it's like a poll.
Okay.
Not everybody in the country is asked the question, are you working? Are you looking for work? Just a handful. In businesses, about 600,000 businesses. Well, they don't all get their returns in on time. I would like them all to come in on time, but BLS keeps the door open for 2 more months to get more information. So what you saw on Friday was the effect of trying to do a better job, getting more information.
The revisions are what have him so upset. Again, I know most people may not have a chance to actually pay attention to all the aspects of how this works, but the revisions came out as well. And for May and June, the numbers that were already disappointing were even worse, disastrously disruptive. That's the way it works. And he explains how those things work. And I guess enough people can't pay attention to the boring guy who's talking with glasses, who's telling you what his job was and how it used to work and how it still works that same way. All we're supposed to pay attention to is Donald Trump fired someone and suddenly everything's gonna be rosy and great again. That's just surface level bullshit. That's how fascists work. That's why they were so upset when people called him what he is, an authoritarian. That's why they don't want you to realize what it is that they're doing. If you accept that he's a fascist, you'll look into the things he does and go, damn, that looks pretty fascist. We have to go through 100 videos of people breaking down what it is that's wrong and how things actually work and compare it to the cartoonish, childlike things that they say and expect you to believe. So which one would you believe? Your wallets or the guy who's telling you why your wallets are being depleted right now? Versus the guy who says you never made more money in your life while you're wondering where the hell that money is. That's all I got on at least that subject of him firing the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner. And what's going to be next is some loser put in place. By the way, also Jerome Powell, he still couldn't run out yet, but there was someone on the board at the Fed that resigned. And they're looking to replace, I believe it was a woman, to replace her with someone who's also a loyalist on that board in hopes that they'll do what Donald Trump wants to do as far as getting rid of Jerome Powell, so then they can place that person in the position to continue doing the same things that he wants this person he's going to place as the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics to do for him as well. A complete, they called it a deep state when they were running. It's a complete reversal of that. It's a deep state of fascist loyalists. That's why they scoured the whole government and said, are you loyal to Donald Trump? And if you're not, get the hell out of here. We need loyalists who are willing to lie and sell their souls for $500 to get a chance to make this guy look better than he ever could be. He's been a failure his entire life. We're finding out as we're all becoming a failure with him, why. Let's move on to other stuff. I'm 23 minutes in. I'm glad I started early. I wish I had started 15 minutes early, but the damn technology didn't work for me. Oh, really fast, really fast. How you guys doing? What's up, Bubba Franks? I'm just saying hi to everybody. Dexter Wong, Squirrel Dragon. I love the dragons being here. Abby Normal X, good to see you as well. And Dragon Shepherd, Grumpy Cat, like seeing you guys here as well too. And Game Queen 81. I saw someone earlier say that I'm coming in hot on a Monday. There's so many things that happen over the weekend when it comes to this administration. There's no such thing as burying news on a Friday like it used to be in politics. These guys are so out of control. There's constant, every day, there's an onslaught of fascism, and it's really hard to keep up with it. I could add 6 more stories, other things that he's done since Friday afternoon. So I'm glad you guys are here. Let's roll with more of this. Here's Charlemagne, Charlemagne the God, if you guys don't know. He does a show, and he transitioned to a lot more politics and society talking. And he went on Fox News, oddly, on Lara Trump's show. Lara Trump is Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, wife to one of his kids. And he had this to say about what's going on with this Republican Party and the fallout over the Epstein cover-up. Let's keep it real. It's what it is.
I think that traditional conservatives are going to take the Republican Party back. I think there's a political coup going on right now in the Republican Party that people aren't paying attention to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think that this Epstein thing is going to be a way for traditional conservatives to take their party back. I really do. I think that they know this is the issue that has gotten the base riled up. The MAGA base isn't letting this issue go, and for the first time, they know they can, probably take their party back and not piss off the MAGA base. I think that
I can completely disagree with what Charlemagne is saying there. I don't think there's a traditional Republican base that's ready to take this party back, especially since the way that we got here was that traditional Republican base believed in all the things that they're implementing. They just never had enough of an idea to say, let's just completely violate the Constitution to do it. They were trying to convince enough people that all the bad things they were doing were done by the other party. And then after that case, maybe they'll vote enough of us in to then dismantle the entire country. And they couldn't really fool enough people. I mean, they did in iterations, but every time they would destroy more of the country, then it would revert back. These fascists are finding ways to try and make sure that never happens. And he was talking to Lara Trump, as I pointed out. So, of course, Donald Trump was watching, making sure that his person that he placed, his family member, that nepotism thing, the way that happens in fascist regimes, placed in Fox News, which is the propaganda arm, one of the propaganda arms of this administration. He's like, how could she let this guy on her show to then talk about the disastrous nature of my cover-up of the Epstein situation? So this is what he said in response, and you won't be surprised by the way he worded this. This is crazy. The very wonderful and talented Lara Trump. I told you he's worried that it's her and it's her show because his loyalists are watching it. Anyways, the very wonderful and talented Lara Trump, whose show is a big rating success, put racist sleazebag Charlemagne the God. Why is he allowed to use the word God when describing himself? Can anyone imagine the uproar there'd be if I used that nickname? Motherfucker, you do. You call yourself Jesus and the God saved you and you're supposed to be the next Messiah. So stop. Continuing. He's a low IQ individual, has no idea what words are coming out of his mouth, and knows nothing about me or what I've done. Just like ending 5 wars, including a 31-year bloodbath between the Republic of Congo and Rwanda, where 7 million people have died, and there was no end in sight. He didn't know that, or India and Pakistan are wiping out Iran's nuclear capabilities, or closing the horrendous open border, or creating the greatest economy. Lies upon lies upon lies, where prices and inflation have come way down, another lie, and where stupid and corrupt Joe Biden set the record for doing the worst job as president ever. But this dope Charlemagne would vote for Sleepy Joe or Kamala. Remember, 1 year ago, our country was dead, and now it's the hottest, in quotations for some reason, country anywhere in the world, MAGA. He types in MAGA rally speech and just stacks lie after lie after lie. And for some reason, Charlemagne's the racist. Okay, so this guy sees black and brown people, and as soon as he sees them say anything, he calls them a racist. I'm sorry, if he sees them say anything that's against his lies, suddenly they're racist. That's how he thinks. But I thought racism didn't exist anymore in this country. Anyways, so as far as this Epstein cover-up that he's so angry that Charlemagne was then talking about, Donald Trump goes on another arm of his propaganda media campaigns over on Newsmax, and he's talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. This is not the first time you heard it, but he says it every time, and he thinks this is a good cover-up scheme.
Ghislaine Maxwell serving 20 years in prison for sex trafficking. Is clemency on the table for her in exchange for testimony?
I'm allowed to do it, but nobody's asked me to do it. I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about the case, but I know I have the right to do it. I have the right to give pardons. I've given pardons to people before, but nobody's even asked me to do it.
Again, he has the right to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. He said it, I think, in a standing up press conference when probably helicopters and stuff was around. He's about to leave town to go golf. He said it on another network. He keeps talking about how he has this right to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, but nobody's asked me to. You've been asked 6 times, bro, and none of those times have you said, I'm not going to do that. But you did send your personal attorney, who's now part of your Justice Department, to then go talk to her in secret and create some kind of deal where she can potentially try and clear your name when nobody is going to believe it. As a matter of fact, this is what they've done in response. After talking to Ghislaine Maxwell in secret and going on about how she's going to reveal all the real culprits of the Epstein list that apparently doesn't exist according to his FBI. Anyways, this is what they did with Ghislaine Maxwell, because this is totally not a cover-up at all.
Question, it is a much more difficult place to be for anyone, for any offender. And certainly given her charges and the length of her sentence, it made sense that she was designated to Tallahassee. Where she is now at Bryan is a minimum security camp. There are no cells. There are no guard towers. The inmates, and I did speak to a client there today who said she hadn't seen Ms. Maxwell yet, but they have pods. So there's maybe 2 or 3 girls in a pod. Women are allowed outside from 6 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. There is no controlled movement. There's much more in terms of activities to do. I understand there's even a yoga course that's taught there. So it is a diametrically different situation from where she came. I understand why they might have transferred her. There's probably, anybody that's cooperating for the government might have a target on their back, and it made sense to move her. Why she was moved to a camp, I don't know. And that is a very difficult move to accomplish under any circumstances.
Why is it difficult? What do you mean?
Somebody like Ms. Maxwell, from my understanding, had at least 2 management variables associated with her case. So a management variable is a policy the Bureau of Prisons has that said that if you have a sentence greater than 10 years, you can't go to a camp. If you have greater than 20 years, you might have to go to a medium level security. If you have a charge of violence or any sexual offense, you're not typically eligible for a minimum security camp. The fact that she had at least 2 of these variables waived, one, that she had more than 10 years remaining on her sentence, and certainly the charge itself is very, very atypical. I've had clients with 1 or both of those charges, and getting a management variable waived for anyone within the Bureau of Prisons is next to impossible. To have 2 management variables waived, highly unusual.
She's had management variables waived. It's incredibly impossible to do these things, as was pointed out there by someone who knows what they're talking about. He's a prison consultant. His name is Sam Miguel, and he was talking about how Ghislaine Maxwell's been moved to a minimum security camp, not prison anymore. It's just a camp where they can go out, hang out, do some yoga, and maybe have a better, lovelier time while they're serving their 20-year prison sentence for violating countless women and girls. Sexual assault, trafficking, all those things that this party talks about, what they care about. The leader of that party has just transferred her over and broken all kinds of rules and norms in doing such a thing because he needs her. Don't forget, I talked about it last week too. When that story that leaked about the birthday book, that was a sign. It was a shot across the bow, is what they were pointing out, that her family, Ghislaine Maxwell's family, was letting Trump and his people know, we've got dirt on you. You better start doing what we want, because he has an incentive to keep her quiet. Well, I think we already all know this, but still, as I point out, the propaganda arms in the media for this administration have to come out strong. And this is not the first time this guy has said this. Greg Kelly over at Newsmax, this disgusting sumbitch, listen to him talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, who we know everything about.
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell didn't have a friend in the world. He could have easily gotten away with saying, what the media wanted to hear, but he didn't. And I find that remarkably human, and it's telling, and it signals to me that there's something else going on here and that it's an injustice. It reminds me of when President Trump, among anybody in the country really in public office, he would talk about Ashley Babbitt. Do you remember that? And he gained nothing, really, politically, from talking about that. I mean, he scored points with me and those who know the truth about Ashley Babbitt, but there are a lot of folks, Republicans even, a lot of folks did not want to talk about January 6th. He did. He did. It reminds me of the kind of this, has the same feel. Ghislaine Maxwell, he would talk about, and he did it in a certain way. Now, folks, I know people are horrified when I say there's a possibility that this individual just might be innocent. But think about it. Who's told us about her? The most reviled institutions in America, right? The media and the Biden Justice Department, right? They did the heavy lifting on this stuff.
The media and the Biden Justice Department. Bro, you're on TV with cameras in front of you in a studio for a, maybe I'm blanking on what the things are called, a media organization talking about how Ghislaine Maxwell just might be innocent, for multiple times going down this route, because you have to try and protect the guy who you're paid to protect. And if you don't do it, you're out of a job, and therefore you're no longer part of the fascist aspect, the media aspect of running this fascist government. That's what Greg Kelly's doing. That's what Greg Kelly's doing. They're trying to normalize what it is that she did, when previous to that, you know what the worst thing in the world was to these guys? Traffickers, human traffickers. It's why they said all these folks that they're running up on the streets in the city of LA are doing right now. We got to get rid of all of these horrific criminals, except for that white one who has dirt on our president. Except for that one. Except for all the proof before we've seen and heard of Donald Trump talking about how he's a predator, specifically on young girls. It's documented. We've heard it. We've seen it. We've heard the victims talk. But Greg Kelly says, you know what? Those guys just might be the worst of the worst. And the reason why he talks like that about his president is because this is how the president talks about the women that work for him. This is what, that same network, Newsmax, Donald Trump was talking about Caroline Levitt, you know, that liar that was holding up the piece of paper saying that his signature means everything. This is the way he talks about Caroline Levitt.
Answer this. I didn't realize she'd be in the room, but she's on my list. Caroline Levitt.
She's become a star. It's that face, it's that brain, it's those lips, the way they move like she's a machine gun. Is she in the room?
She's in the room.
She's a star, and she's great. She's a great person, actually. But she's, I don't think anybody has ever had a better press secretary than Caroline. She's been amazing.
Mr. President, answer this. I didn't.
You see her lips, the way they move. Oh, so fast. Can't wait. Is she in the room with us? Because, you know, I always say things like this when her back is turned. I mean, well, that is until all the cameras are off. Then I say it to her face. But I don't want you guys to know that's how I talk about Caroline Levitt. She's amazing. You see her lips? Remember that guy, Greg Kelly, who was just saying that Ghislaine Maxwell is most likely innocent, and then we got to get off of her back, and all these dirty people in the media are trying to take her down. Remember what Donald Trump, the way he was just talking about Caroline Levitt, and watch the way that same guy, Greg Kelly, was talking about Alina Habba. This was funny at the time, but disgusting at also the same time. This is why they're the same type of people.
Support the campaign and get it out, you know?
And as we say goodnight, if I could see that footage of Alina Habba speaking to the media in that courthouse, and when you come out there and you speak like you do, and quite frankly, I mean, the whole package, it really is something. Even the fake news, they called it astoundingly confident. There's something kind of special happening in those moments. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if it feels different, but it's pretty damned impressive. And it seems to me like you're moving the needle in who knows what kind of ways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm
hope
talking
so,
about?
Greg.
Go ahead.
I really do. And I appreciate you saying that. I'll be honest, that
was back when Alina Habba was losing every case that Donald Trump was in front of in court, and then claimed that he wasn't a 34-time felon. But still, Greg Kelly was like, he was biting his lip. When they came back from the little video that he called for, he was literally closing his eyes and biting his lip to talk about how he loves the way she moves. Can you see it? Oh, Alina, aren't you the best ever? Ooh, ooh. Yeah, she was definitely moving the needle. Apparently it was his needle that she was moving. And he had, you know, he couldn't help himself on live TV except to talk about it. I don't know why anyone ever believed that these guys weren't predators. They tell us every day in every aspect of their lives. But just in case you needed, outside of the folks who reveal themselves to be the predators, maybe. And by the way, you guys, there's graphic descriptions coming in these next couple of clips. Maybe we should hear. It's a shame that we have to. But we have to hear from some of the victims that have been speaking out since it happened to them. This is not brand new. They're just now getting more airtime and camera time for it because this president is covering it up. But they have to always talk about what it is that happened to them. We know what Epstein did, and now that he's dead, in whatever ways that people are arguing over, some of the victims still have to talk about how disgusting and horrific Ghislaine Maxwell was, and in part of this entire scheme. So again, you guys, trigger warning for anyone who's triggered by these descriptions. There's graphic descriptions of what it is that she did to some people.
She didn't just procure girls and women for Epstein, but she herself participated in their abuse. I think that's an important thing for people to understand. And then she also, made threats. She made threats to my sister, to our family, when it was clear that my sister had reported her. And so I think that to be told that suddenly she's being brought to the table as a potential source of information when she's previously been charged with perjury by the government is very confusing and unsettling. She didn't just procure.
She's not the only one who's against this. In fact, it's the families of, again, one of the biggest named victims in Virginia Giuffre, who talked last week on CNN about it as well, as he just blows them off as whoever, doesn't matter. Oh yeah, she was stolen from me. We covered that last week. We have to keep hearing from the actual victims and the things that these two and others, many, many others, that Donald Trump refuses to name after he promised to, because he's one of them. Because of that, we have to keep hearing from them, even now in this case, beyond the grave, to see exactly how devastating and detrimental that their actions had on other folks' lives. But this president, and for some reason, I think I may know the reason, but Greg Kelly is all about trying to sanitize their images in the face of the reality. Here's Virginia Giuffre, who they say killed herself over this.
I was instructed to that's when I was instructed to get undressed and have sex with Jeffrey Epstein while Ghislaine Maxwell was participating as well.
You want to take a moment?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
So you were abused by both of them in your very first encounter?
Yeah, both of them. I was abused by Ghislaine and Epstein.
They've been telling their stories. It's impossible for her to tell her story now because she's no longer with us. They told their stories. We ignored it. And now when it has to come back up because the guy is having a blatant and open cover-up of the crimes of all the people involved, they're going to say the folks who want to find out are the filthy ones. That's how this country is run. That's for some reason how he keyed in on the way this country's run. The most vulnerable are the worst, and the most powerful are the best. That's how he's running this country, and he's convincing enough people that many cases are part of the most vulnerable that he's not of this predatory group. But Ghislaine Maxwell deserves a pardon. The person who did that deserves a pardon. Yeah. So, one more story. I got a few minutes. Jumping over on TDR right after this. They'll be calling me in a minute. So let me see if I can run through this. I think you guys heard about what's going on in Texas with the gerrymandering case. There's been some updates. In fact, pretty much in a couple hours today, in 2 hours and 15 minutes, we're going to find out where this all falls in. I'm going to give you guys details on that. But first, in case you guys hadn't heard, this is what's happening in Texas with their gerrymandering case and the way the way the Democrats have responded.
at right there. Dozens of Democrats from the state legislature flying out of Texas to block the Republican-led effort backed by President Trump to redraw the Texas congressional map. This is a fight that could have nationwide consequences when it comes to who controls the U.S. House of Representatives. The plan could potentially eliminate 5 Democratic seats in the U.S. House ahead of the 2026 midterms. Many of those Texas Democrats have traveled to Illinois, denying the state House the minimum number of members needed to advance the redistricting plan. Others have gone to New York, some to Massachusetts. This is what Texas Democrats said after arriving in Chicago late last night.
The tool they're using is a racist, gerrymandered map, a map that seeks to use racial lines to divide hardworking communities who have spent decades building up their power and strengthening their voices. And Governor Abbott is doing this in submission to Donald Trump.
If you can't win with your policies, you have to try and win by changing the entire system over. They're open about it. They've talked about how they would eliminate 5 Democratic seats with this gerrymandering, which is nothing new. They're just going to extreme versions. Everything that this guy does is the extreme version of that. We've seen both parties do gerrymandering. In this case, they're looking to completely eliminate the folks that they can't beat. As a matter of fact, the folks who continue to come forward that they still wouldn't be able to beat next. That's how this operation works. So Democrats have responded. As you guys saw, they took off, went to Illinois and a few other states to avoid even having this whole thing happen. James Tallarico, who's is a state representative there, he talked about it in more detail. He was talking about education before. I've always liked what James Tallarico has said. He does it well. Here he is talking about it.
This is State Representative James Tallarico from Texas. If you're seeing this video, my Democratic colleagues and I have just left our beloved state to break quorum and to redraw the political maps here in Texas in the middle of the decade to get him 5 more seats and protect his majority in Congress. They're turning our districts into crazy shapes to guarantee the outcome they want in the 2026 elections. If this power grab succeeds, they will hang on to power without any accountability from the voters. But Texas Democrats are fighting back. We're leaving the state, breaking quorum, and preventing Republicans from silencing our voices and rigging the next election. We are not fighting for the Democratic Party. We are fighting for the democratic process, and the stakes could not be higher. We have to take a stand. This is
I've been begging for Democrats to do something different. And as we've gotten to this point, some here, as you saw, the Texas Democrats are doing something about it, no matter how angry and crazy these guys talk. One more point on the projection. That's why he talked about rigging elections so many times, so that when he implements these types of policies and tells the governor of a state to do what he tells them to do in order to rig that election in his favor, we're not saying it, he said it. As he does that, if anybody says, like Tallarico accurately just said, when you're rigging an election, it shows that you suck at this. So that then maybe the brainless followers can go, why are Democrats talking about rigging elections? Maybe because we see it in front of our faces how it works. Donald Trump's claim of rigged elections still have zero evidence behind it. He just says it and expects you to believe it. It's a good thing that there's some folks within the state, regular folks who vote, who talk about how much of a rigged game this is and the way that this guy likes to cheat. You guys may have seen this elderly gentleman talk at this event about what it is that's happening, but in case you didn't, I want you guys to see it.
He was caught cheating on video on the golf course. He cheated on his taxes. He cheated on his business loans. He cheated on his wives. He cheated on the business contractors that he stiffed through 40 years of business. And he tried to cheat in the 2020 election. Now he's trying to cheat and win this 2026 midterm election because he knows he can't win. He has ordered Governor Greg Abbott to obey his command and cheat on a Texas redistricting scam to gerrymander 5 new, grossly and illegally drawn House districts. We are here because Texas is the first state under assault. If Texas House Republicans bow down to Trump like Abbott did, the other red states will follow. And if they do that, then America will be under assault.
Sadly, we already are. And he makes a great point about this being the testing ground, similar to where the testing ground for their mass deportation policy was to run through Los Angeles and through California itself to destroy people's lives and hope that they can implement this everywhere else. And the damage that they've already done is irreversible. They're looking to continue to do it another way here. It's a total weird how this term fits everything that they're doing. Fascist takeover of the country. But I mean, I guess this old guy who knows everything that's happening and voiced the background of this president. It's weird how he knows it, but then he's not some elected official that's trying to make some kind of money off of everyone else. You know, those corrupt Democrats. Greg Casar, who's also another Democrat who's from Texas, talks more deeply about this. And this is one of the aspects that connects to the way that this party, this Republican Party, has always been. It's just Donald Trump took it to the next level. Casar talks about the violations as they're doing this redistricting, gerrymandering process, how it violates the Voting Rights Act from the Civil Rights era that Republicans said we don't need anymore. Oop, hold on. There it goes. There it is. No, that's not. That's not it. Hold on. I got it. Hold on. Here it is. Come on. Here it is. Just calm down. Here it goes.
People need to pay attention to what's happening in Texas right now because Donald Trump wants to spread this kind of ploy across America. Trump knows he can't win the upcoming midterm elections, so he's trying to rig them. And the way he's trying to do it is to dismantle the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as we know it. Molly, as you just stated, he is trying, for example, to dismantle Hispanic and African-American opportunity districts. I represent a district overwhelmingly of Latinos here in the Austin area. And if Donald Trump is able to suppress the votes of Latinos here in Austin, soon enough, he wants to do that across America. And he could do that and ultimately try to get more complicit and corrupt Trump Republicans to continue to defend his agenda, even as it becomes less and less popular. People.
That's how it works. Again, it's the testing ground, but specifically in eliminating the power of people who voted people like Greg Casar in. So in order to ignore voters and a vast majority of us across the country, you just eliminate their voice. And I remember, again, as I talked about, Charlemagne was talking about how this the normal traditional Republican Party is going to try and come back and they can take back over because of the whole thing with Epstein cover-ups. Maybe not, because they're the ones who implemented the path to get to this point. Remember, they were dismantling things in the Voting Rights Act. Remember, they pressed the Supreme Court to do these things. Their whole objective was to bring us back. Donald Trump is the pinnacle of that whole thing. They're in agreement with them. There's a reasons why they're not fighting back, because this is where they were coming to. This is the point. He's just wild and says it openly. They're a little bit more measured about how they talk about it. Donald Trump just says, I hate you black folks and I hate you Latinos. You guys are rapists, criminals, and drug dealers, and I want you out of my effing country because it's a white country. That's how he talks. And the rest of the Republican Party, who's the traditional ones, didn't want to say it so explicitly. But as they dismantled the avenues of our Voting Rights Act that was necessary because that's how our country always has been, this is what making America great again means, taking us back. Really fast, I'd love to go to Jasmine Crockett, who they said that part of this whole gerrymandering is supposed to be literally gerrymandered out of her own district. She no longer lives in her district. Try and make sense of that. She goes on about Ken Paxton, though, and who he is as this cabal of fascists tries to put this plan together. I love the way she points this out. Watch.
Ken Paxton is MAGA through and through. We're talking about someone who had been under felony indictment in the state of Texas for almost a decade. In fact, he was indicted before the felon in the White House was indicted. We're talking about someone who had been under federal investigation. We're talking about someone who was impeached by his own party and then was not convicted, as his wife sat in the jury on the Senate side. And now she has said, I want to divorce you. And she's stating that it's biblical reasons. And I guess it had nothing to do with that fake Uber account that he had when he was going to see his mistress. That was a part of his impeachment trial. Let me tell you, there is drama on top of drama, and there definitely are no family values whatsoever to be found. And now we know that this same attorney general has decided that he wants to threaten these lawmakers because they are the real criminals in the state of Texas, not the guy who should be behind bars, but the lawmakers who have decided that in a majority minority state, they should have districts that are reflective of the people so that they can actually be in alignment with our Constitution, because that's exactly what the 15th Amendment was about. Ken Paxton is MAGA through.
They want to eliminate the representative government that we've got. They want to eliminate it. If you're black and you're brown, or if you're a white person, if you're an Asian person who's voted in people to represent you, they don't want those people representing you anymore. And Ken Paxton, as she clearly pointed out, none of that is made up. You can literally look up all the facts that she detailed about Ken Paxton, but they're the party of family values as they murder children and cover up sex traffickers of children. Last little bit of it. I brought up Ken Paxton for a particular reason, because he's the one who told Greg Abbott his response, which says by 3 p.m. today that if these Texas Democrats don't come back, he's going to eliminate them. He's going to cut out their seats and replace them with whoever he wants. That doesn't sound very fascist at all, does it? But still, this is what Ken Paxton thinks he can do. He's the one who gave Greg Abbott, the governor of the state, the idea that he could do that, even though he's a criminal himself. Watch. But this is the reality behind it.
Governor Abbott says if those Democrats are not back by 3 p.m. Central Time today, he will vacate their offices. But the authority he's claiming to do that comes from a non-binding legal opinion issued by the state attorney general, Ken Paxton, after the last time Democrats did something like this in 2021. Paxton, who was running for Senate, has called for the Democrats who have left to be arrested. A lot of politics at play here at
Nothing but politics at play here. The bad guys are trying to continue their takeover. That's all I got, you guys. I'm going to see you guys in a couple minutes. I'm going over to TDR. I had to rush through that last one, but I had to give you guys this breakdown. There's so many things happening. Maybe we'll talk about some more over there. I'll see you guys in a second. Glad you were here. It's the best damn day of the week. I'm going to keep going in a minute here. I'm already fired up. Let's go. I'll see you guys in a second. Bye.